Hello, everybody. It's good to talk to you again, and I still have to apologize. We're trying to get these videos up. We're probably still 6 behind, so I'm putting them out faster than Chris can get them up. So I apologize not getting back with you on this. This lady's asked me about, or I guess it's a female, asked me about Cushing's, where you have a hyperstimulation of the cortical steroids in the adrenal glands. And it can also be the pituitary that's hyperstimulating the adrenal glands. But if you notice, a lot of the symptoms also are parathyroid symptoms. So if you start looking at Cushing's, you'll find that it is the endocrine glands that are giving you these problems, no question. So when something is hyperstimulating or hypostimulating, which if you look at some of the symptoms, it means that it's hypostimulating, if you will. It's shutting down, if you will, the parathyroid gland. And I'll say that most of the symptoms are not hypersymptoms. Most of the symptoms are hyposymptoms, also involving the medulla of the adrenal glands and neurotransmitters, why the fatigue. If you start looking at the symptoms and understanding the different steroids, the different neurotransmitters, you'll start seeing that it encases a lot of the endocrine glands. So more pituitary based. But if you're having trouble with the pituitary, what is the pituitary made from? Just a bunch of cells, that's correct. And where you find cells, what else do you find? The two fluids that handle the health of those cells. So when you have something that's hyperstimulating tissue, it's either a chemical ingestion of, probably not a neurotoxin, because a neurotoxin has a tendency to suppress the endocrine glands. So it could be heavy metals, it could be just the lymph system, which is not moving well in the head area. Almost everybody has the adrenals anyway, so that's a given. Especially when you see the cortisols, it's not hyperstimulating cortisol, it's under, so that's why you see the diabetes type 2. Health of all the cells of the human body, whether it's the adrenals, the pituitary, the parathyroid, or into the organs of the liver, the kidneys, is always a cellular thinking. You have to always think cellular. And this whole process I've been bringing you guys along is to think cellular and the two fluids. I just had a lovely osteopath in here. She was also an ophthalmologist. I couldn't believe that. Very lovely gal. And just loves this level of healing. And that's what we need to see more. More osteopaths becoming more osteopathic than allopathic. And this ego of wanting to become allopathic is going to soon show itself to not be as worthy as you think, because this is not the field you want to be in. You want to be in the healing, restoration, rebuilding, genetic remembering cell. You want to be in regeneration. You want to know the causative factors. And that's what I'm working with you guys on, and you're all doing such a good job, and I appreciate all these great things. So, when you have Cushing's, when you have MS, when you have cancer, when you have anything, throw the name disease away, because that doesn't exist, right? Disempowerment, remember? And focus on the cells and the two fluids. Whether something's hypo or hyper, you're going to go the same direction. If there is a hypersensitivity to something or hyperstimulation, but if you read the symptoms, you find more hypo in 90% of the symptoms of Cushing's. So you're going to get into the cell and make the cell healthy again. Even though there's some genetic thinking problems in cells, okay, well, you're going to remember those cells. You're going to give them new memories. You're going to power them up, introduce cells to a new level of functionability. And how do you do that? You're going to introduce them to higher consciousness. You're going to introduce them, just like you grow, into more truth. And truth, in terms of the human body, is raw fruits. We're frugivores. You can add raw vegetables, okay. This is the truth. And truth carries with it consciousness. We'll take a look at what is plants. Plants have a consciousness. All things are pieces of the whole consciousness. These are states of consciousness. Everything is conscious at one level or another. And merging consciousnesses together makes more strength and power. It's neat because let's say you're a carpenter and someone hires you to come into their house and do work. Well, that's what you're doing with the plants. This plant is a liver plant. We take and hire, basically, this plant to come in and fix our liver. And that's how we do the herbs. We use them for their specialty and what they're here for. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Because if we look at our repertoire of tools that we need to help ourselves, we don't have many. So this is why. But we don't need many. We don't have to have, like, pharmaceuticals that are a mile long. We don't have to have homeopathics that are a mile long. We don't have to have these things. I've got 55 herbal formulas, so that's a lot. But a good example is that a lady here with cancer in the lungs, she bleeds all the time, and her oncologist said, well, you're probably going to bleed out and die that way. It's like, oh, man, I have a bleeding formula. That formula stops internal bleeding. So she can use that and strengthen her capillaries at the same time with working on the parathyroid, and she'll be okay, and we can keep working and working and working. That's the beauty. If any practitioners are viewing this, this is the beauty of botanicals. You can use them as antispasmatics, as homeostatics, or hemostatics. You can use them as anything you want. The range that they have is so incredible. It's amazing. But on the Cushing's, you're going to go right into the kidneys. You're going to detoxify that lymph system. You're going to get on the raw foods. You could use upper circulation, and I would be careful about overstimulating glandular function if there's any hypertendencies. Hypotendencies, you can use glandulars. Hypertendencies, I generally don't touch the tissue, like hyperthyroidism. I generally don't give anybody with hyperthyroid anything for the thyroid. The thyroid is already kicking on down the line. Hyper cases are so much easier to find a remedy for than hypo. Because hyper is generally a simple detoxification, get that lymph moving out of the head, get out of the adrenals. But hypo means, you know what, I just, what's my job? You wanted cortisol, what? Cortisol, oh, you wanted some, you know, that's much more difficult than, yeah, I'm really working, I'm really going, you know, settle down. Oh, okay. So a lot of difference between those two issues. Hit the raw, hit the fruits. You can use brain and nerve just to strengthen the nervous system. If there's a neurospasticity to this as well, being that it affects the medulla or the part of the adrenal glands that produces neurotransmitters. The medulla is the inner core of everything, and the cortex is the outer core of everything. So each area of a gland produces different substances depending whether it's the inner core of the medulla or the cortex, like the adrenals. So if you need more help with that, detoxify. But you're going to use your kidneys. I would use 2 kidney herbs. I would use 2 lymphatic herbs. I get after those bowels. I would use upper circulation if you want. But when you start moving your lymph system, it'll eventually start moving head to toe. If you're more in a hypo state, then by all means get on the endocrine gland formula, get on the adrenal formula, or use the glandulars for these things. And it'll strengthen these tissues up and pull you out of a hypo state. Hyper, just detoxify. Get deeper into the body. If you're not digging deep enough, you're not probably doing all fruit. And if you are, it just takes a while. You can do some fasting there. Now, someone asked me about our 12-week program. You know, I set that up so if you called in from or went to a health food store or a chiropractor, let's say, that's busy in his office, he could say, here, do this 12-week program. And then he could do his thing, because most chiropractors really line it up like a medical doctor. They line up their rooms and it's boom, 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 boom. I have to sit and work with my clients a lot more than most practitioners do, so appointments with me are much longer. You'll spend about 7 to 15 minutes with a medical practitioner at about $80 to $150. Me, you spend 2 hours for $100 an hour. And the thing with us, though, you can get remedy. Now, 12-week programs, they're just a program I set up for 12 weeks. We've done a little more aggressive work with those 12-week programs. For someone that really wants to dig in, it's a good way to go. If you're really serious in your problems, then you might want to have us work you a program or use an appointment or something like that. But for the less serious people, yeah, this is why I do these videos, to educate you, to help yourselves, because that's the goal, is to change the consciousness on this planet. Now, someone asked about aloe vera for burns, or was talking about it, and it was like, yeah, Angel B. Yeah, good job with the aloe vera. I love aloe. It's good for you in every way, shape, or form. A wonder plant. I love it. I can tell you story after story. There's a great Amish healer in Pennsylvania. He does burdock leaves. I've seen some stuff that he's done that just really cool tissue regeneration with the burdock leaves. He's made a burn salve. I don't see the burdock leaves in the burn salve, but certainly aloe and burdock leaves, very powerful. Raw foods, very powerful. The beauty of plants, of taking pain out of the tissues and accelerate the healing of cells. I love that. I mean, it's just so cool when you're all waking up to the God force within your cells. I do love that. Thank you for all your comments. I do. And you too, Water Full of Love. You too, my friend. All of you guys are great. This is a question. I have a question about the ligament damage, or torn meniscus and ligament damage in this. I'm a 24-year-old gymnast. He hurt, or she, I can't tell. It's a guy. Tore this pretty bad. And can a knee heal without surgeries? Well, absolutely. Matter of fact, this is when you want to look at the parathyroid gland. And you want to make sure your body's utilizing calcium. And this is where a glandular can come in here. There's one that Standard Process puts out, and it's called Cal, CALMA+. Now, it does have some calcium magnesium, so it does drive me crazy. These labs do these things, but you got to realize these are intellectual thinkers. But it's this raw parathyroid tissue there. So if you did something like that short term to accelerate your body's absorption and utilization of calcium, that would be cool. I've got a bones formula. I love that. Comfrey knit bone. That's what we call old Comfrey's knit bone. Horsetail, full of silica and calcium. So hit that body full of these dark greens. When you have an injury, hit a lot of alfalfa. Really hit a lot of the greens and the green juices. This will accelerate repair, get that body alkaline, stay off of proteins. This is going to take more calcium out, and you heal less. So what does that tell you? So really hit the raw, hit the fruits, just like you're doing, man, and you'll repair. You can always use salves locally or topically to drive those into that area and accelerate the healing of those tissue. But I tell you, also move your lymph. Because if your lymph is sluggish and all that exercise and all that work, all that acid is going to weaken that connective tissue, weaken those tendons, weaken those muscles. And then you're going to have problems like this from here on. So you want to move that lymph and strengthen those tissues. This is, again, it's all about acidosis, the trauma. Acidosis, you're putting a lot of trauma into the body doing these kind of sports, which is okay as long as you're moving that lymph. Because that lymph is responsible for removing the byproducts of the tear and the damage. The blood, you're packing that full, so good work. And yes, any sports injury needs to be dealt with like that. Arnica, all the good sports stuff like that's good stuff.